Good afternoon.
Let's try that again.
Good afternoon. I'm Clarence Wheeler Coseboom, CW to my friends. I came here in 1874 looking for opportunity. It was perfect timing, right between the gold rush and the land boom. The land I bought is very near to where we're standing today. Oh, and this is my lovely wife, Liz.
Elizabeth. I am CW's third wife, but to be fair, he's my second husband. Now they say it's good to be a man's first love, but it's much better to be his last. Now CW's first wife, Nellie Clapp, died at the age of 33, delivering the last of the 6 children they had.
I named the baby for her mother.
And then he married Dora Chapman just months after Nellie died, and she gave him the 7th child, and she died after just 13 years of marriage to this.
All right, enough of this. Let's talk about some of the events that helped shape my family and the city. First, the city's misguided decision to disincorporate.
How about your son's brief life of crime?
How about the discovery of oil up here on the hill?
Fine. We'll just discuss Walter's legal woes in a bit. Now, CW had political ambitions. He was elected to a seat on the Board of Trustees. Nellie died just 4 months later, but I don't even think that guy skipped a beat in fulfilling his governmental duties.
I was refocusing my grief. Now, the Board of Trustees is what we used to call the City Council. So I was going to be part of governing this city. Funding for the city was a major issue. And there were some people who thought that there was an easy way to get the money without raising taxes.
Liquor sales and saloons, like McCarthy's downtown. Could it be that selling liquor and issuing liquor licenses could really bring in enough revenue so the citizens wouldn't have to pay for their city services?
Long Beach was founded as a dry city, and I intended to keep it that way.
Before you were elected, you said that you would not vote to close down McCarthy's if their patrons were orderly. But the minute you won your seat, you voted to close it down.
I wasn't the only one. 2 of the other board members voted the same way.
In 1896, legalizing alcohol and women's suffrage collided. Some men thought that if women were allowed to vote, they would just outlaw liquor everywhere. Liquor distributors paid money to defeat the women's suffrage in an election.
Those damnation peddlers were here spreading their money around to convince voters to dissolve the city, to become part of the unincorporated county. Opening the door to public drunkenness and debauchery was not the way forward.
132 people voted to dissolve the city, while 126 people voted against it. That meant 6 people decided that Long Beach should not be a city.
That election wasn't legal. There was insufficient notification of the election. I'm pretty sure that some of those votes weren't valid. 3 of us trustees refused to go to the certification meeting.
Without a quorum, you couldn't certify the election. They couldn't dissolve the city.
People were mad.
Oh, that's exactly right. People were mad. This was their victory. They voted. How dare those Board of Trustees attempt to overthrow the will of the people?
They sued to force us to report the election results. That election was so close. Couldn't the courts understand the irrationality of it all?
Obviously not, CW. The Los Angeles Superior Court agreed with the residents and declared Long Beach was disincorporated.
We appealed that decision all the way to the state Supreme Court.
But that decision was upheld.
The city of Long Beach was no more.
And you were ordered off the board for persistent neglect.
My fellow anti-liquor associates were off the board too. But it turned out that the funds raised from liquor sales and licenses was less than expected. And now there was no city to provide services. All of those people who insisted on demon alcohol were now complaining that their trash wasn't being picked up. The streets weren't being swept. Oh, the dirt roads were dusty.
It wasn't long before people organized to reincorporate the city. There was another election, and this time, Long Beach was declared a city. The new trustees voted in a new law allowing liquor licenses.
In 1900, there was another election. Well, this time the people would come to their senses and the vote went the other way. Pharmacies could still sell alcohol for medicinal purposes. But aside from the few pharmacies in town, Long Beach was a dry city once again.
In 1903, the city had a tantalizing hoard of confiscated bootleg liquor that they kept in a storeroom right next to the city jail. Which brings us to Walter, your son.
The police noticed that their inventory was dwindling. And then someone called to report empty beer bottles under the pier. One morning at 3 a.m., Walter was caught along with two other boys raiding the storeroom.
They didn't know that the city had hired a night watchman to guard that storeroom. The Los Angeles Times said the boys were pretty well loaded when he swooped on in and turned on the lights. There they were, filling their pockets up with liquor bottles.
One of the other boys was J.S. Saunders. He'd been in trouble for drinking before. I've always believed that he led young Walt astray.
Walter served 1 year in San Quentin and was released in 1904. 5 years later, he was electrocuted when his car came in vicinity of high-powered voltage wires.
It was tragic. He was only 25 years old.
Well, it was another decade later when I came into CW's life. We married in 1915 on New Year's Day. I moved into his home and loved making it something gracious and lovely. I loved flowers, so we had plenty of land so I could have a garden and plenty of food so I could entertain my friends. In June of 1921, I hosted the annual picnic of the Signal Hill Civic League. I was the president, and I invited all the members and their families to come and enjoy our lovely garden and our lovely home.
We had no idea what was to come before the month was over. An oil company drilled up here on the hill. It was a dry hole. But then, less than a mile from our property, they drilled a well that hit. A geyser gushed into the air.
Obviously, they didn't tell the people what it would be like to live in or even near an oil field.
Yes, but you know, there was this general feeling, oh, there must be oil under our land too.
And I appreciate that.
Yes,
but they still didn't know what they bought.
You know, geologists believe that the oil pool stopped around Cherry. Well, you all know they were wrong. There was oil under a large part of this city, and even under the harbor. The lease hounds swooped into Signal Hill to sign leases with property owners for the rights to drill on their land.
So not knowing, the people didn't know, all of a sudden our neighborhood was overwhelmed with trucks just delivering timber to build oil derricks and heavy equipment to do all the drilling. That was messy enough, but it just got worse when the oil well hit. Oil just sprayed all over everything, including our homes and our gardens and our yards.
Sometimes it would flow downhill all the way to the ocean. Now, we signed a lease with Royal Dutch Shell, and they drilled 4 successful wells on our land. Someone was making a fortune, but property owners were lucky to see even a tiny share of the profit.
Up on the hill, our homes became unlivable, and our yards turned into toxic wasteland. My health was failing and I had to give up my presidency of the Civic League. There was no comfort in the oil money or even from farming.
In 1924, Liz passed on.
But CW didn't have time to find wife number 4. He died 2 years later.
Are you wondering what happened to the oil money?
Like the land, it was given to the children and the grandchildren. But that's a story for the different.
We've enjoyed spending this time with you today. Thank you for supporting the Historical Society of Long Beach.
Thank you.